how to become a property developer. This video will give you a very good overview of what's required and my 10 steps on how to become a property developer. So let's keep going. Okay, so before we go forward, let's just understand what property development is. And this is a definition that I've come up and after reading a lot of different books, and this is how it actually comes together. Property development, also known as the real estate development, is a process that is both a science and an art, incorporating a large number of interrelated and interdependent parts that come together to respond to the demand and needs of the society by creating and utilizing the factors of production. Now, this isn't scientific, but if you break everything down, what you have to see, it's a science because there is a method to the madness, how everything is done, how everything is calculated. It's an art because it requires entrepreneurial skills to be able to become a property developer. And all these things are actually interrelated and interdependent on each other. And all of this has to come together in order to actually respond to either the demand or the needs of the society, and by utilizing the factors of production. This is the only technical or let's just say economic term that needs to be considered when trying to figure out what exactly is property development. So what is factors of production? Factors of production are basically defined as per property economics. There are four essential resources: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. A property development project can only come together when the entrepreneur, that is the property developer, uses his or her entrepreneurial skills to bring together land, labor, capital in order to make a profit. That's when you say make a profit, that's what entrepreneurship is. So, property development is an industry with high stakes where fortunes are made and lost every year, irrespective of the market cycles. And of all the property investment strategies that I have studied myself, I believe that property development is the best property investment strategy under the sun. It's like the Ferrari of all property investment strategies. You can pursue property development around the year and through all market conditions, as long as you know how to change gears in your property development business. Property development requires entrepreneurs, that is the property developers, who must be ready to put their skills to test and make hard and swift decisions. And with no barriers to entry, property development is also accessible to amateurs, to moms and dads, and property investors who can use property development as part of their overall property investment strategy to exponentially grow their property portfolios. So as an overview, this is what it actually looks like. These are the 10 different steps. And I'm going to go into detail with each one of them. Okay, the first thing that you got to do is to figure out, so let's say you know nothing about property development and you want to get into property development. These are the things that you got to do. These are the 10 steps that you got to take in order to be able to get going or get your property development business going or get your first development underway. You got to work out your borrowing capacity. Because if you're doing everything with your own money, that's not a good thing, because you will reduce the return that you'll get. So if you leverage off by by borrowing money from a lender, you'll be able to get a better return on your money. So how much money do you have? How much equity do you have? And what is your borrowing capacity? That is how much serviceability, that is your capacity to service the debt, do you have? These are the questions that you've got to ask yourself before you start thinking about property development. In other words, I mean, if you can rephrase the same question and say, how much money do I need to start property development? So in order to figure this out, there's I'll give you a bonus tip. And what this is that, let's say you're thinking about getting into a development project. You have to figure out what is the size of the project that you can do. And the size will be determined by the amount of money that you've got. And but let's say you're starting off with, okay, I've got $200,000. What can I do? The maximum total development cost of a project that you can undertake will depend upon the money that you've got in cash. Okay, the maximum total development cost of your project. The first thing that you got to do is find out the LVR or LTV, which is the loan to value ratio. That is, what is the maximum amount of money that a lender will lend you on your total development cost. If you figure that out, you'll be able to figure out, and I'll give you a formula in a second, to be able to find out how much you can borrow and how much will come out of your pocket. So these are the two things that you've got to figure out: what you can borrow and determine the amount of cash, not equity, you have or are willing to put into the project. So here's the formula. Size of your project is equal to your total cash divided by 100% minus the LVR or the LTV percentage that you've got available. Let's say you've got 200,000 in the bank and you're willing to allocate that 200,000 to say, look, I'm going to do my first development project. I'm going to do that with 200,000. So what is the maximum total development cost of your project that you can undertake? Now, I'm not talking about the gross realization value. I'm talking about the gross realization value is also equal to the total sales value. So let's say if you build something, if you develop something and you develop 4 townhouses or 4 units or multifamily homes or whatever, and each one of them would sell for, let's say, $500,000 each in the market. That means your total GRV or your total sales value is $2 million. That's 500,000 times 4 units, and that's $2 million. But whether or not you do that would depend upon how much money you can borrow. So let's say you can borrow 80% of the money. That means 100% minus 80%. That means you got to come up with 20% of the money. So if you only got 200,000 in your bank account and that's the only money that you want to allocate, you just simply divide that by 20%, and that'll give you the maximum TDC, which is the total development cost of your project, would be $1 million. Now, going back to the same example, let's say your total sales value is $2 million, but if you've got profit in the project, that means the cost of the total development would be a lot less than $2 million, because $2 million is your sale value. It's not your cost. But what this helps you determine is the fact that your maximum total development cost can only be $1 million. So when you are looking for projects and everything, you have to keep that in mind. Okay, that's the money I've got, and that's what I can do. Now, unless you join hands with 4 people who've got the same amount of money with you, this will go 4 times. So that means now your total development cost could be $4 million, because you've got 4 different partners, 4 different other property investors that you maybe came across while doing my course. So now you can do a $4 million project. Okay, second step that you got to do, take and understand, is determine the scale of the project. The scale, which would be determined by what we determined in the previous step, which is the amount of money that we've got, or the size of the project that we've got, will be used to actually determine the location. So whether you're going to target a low to medium or an upmarket location. Determine the type of the development, whether you're going to do townhouses, apartments, multifamily, total number of units that you can do. Because let's say you are building something in a really good suburb and you're building something in a really cheap, away from the city, away from everything else, the construction cost would also vary. Usually it remains the same, but what I found over the years that the construction cost, if somebody was to come and build your house in a really upmarket area, automatically the construction trades and everybody was going to ask you a lot more money, a lot higher margin, because they already see that you can afford a house in there, or afford a development in that area. So where the land value is high, the construction would tend to be a little bit higher because of different reasons. If you were to do the same thing in a CBD area, it would attract a lot more construction costs, because CBDs usually have unions. And over there, trades are more expensive. There could be access to the site issues and so on. So these are the things that you got to understand. Step 3, understand the development potential of the site. You got to be able to figure out what's the maximum, what are the maximum number of units that you can put on a site, which is called the highest best possible use. And this is what I teach in my course, how to determine all of these things. You have to figure out the value of the site without a permit. So let's say you haven't got a permit to actually develop it as yet, or the development approval to develop X number of units. You have to figure out what the value of the site is without one and what the value of the site is going to be with one. Step 4, suburb selection, property development hotspots. You've got to figure out where the next capital growth is coming in, or where the rental yield is too high, or where the rental yield is not as much. Will you be targeting a location for its capital growth potential or the rental yield? Now, you can figure out what the hotspot is going to be. It's more like a sweet spot because it helps you as a property developer. Get a list of all the suburbs with capital growth potential and overlay it on a list of suburbs with high rental growth. And whatever the suburbs that come out to be common are going to be the hotspot where you should be developing. Shortlist 2 to 4 suburbs and farm them. And by farming, I basically mean that you make sure that the location, that you monitor these locations for price fluctuations, design intent, neighborhood character, what's selling, what's not, and the historical sold prices in the area. Step 5, you have to study and understand zoning and different kinds of overlays, which is related to the town planning. So something could have heritage overlays, or some sites could have vegetation protection where if there are trees and everything, you might not be allowed to cut the trees and so on. So you got to spend some time to study your local town planning and understand the zoning determined by your local government area or your council. A good understanding of your local town plan will help you determine the highest best use for your development site and its potential. Step 6, start contacting your local agents. Find out who are the agents who sell development sites in your area. Get rental and market appraisal for similar kind of properties that you are planning to develop. Now this exercise will give you a very good understanding of the potential sites available on the market, as well as the end value of the developed stock. Attend opens. So if you've got an agent who's having an open for something similar that you are planning to develop, you must attend these open for the existing stock that's on the market for sale. This will give you an understanding of what your target audience or potential clients are actually looking for. You can very easily determine the type of kitchen accessories liked by potential buyers, as well as different color schemes, preferred streets, design, floor layouts, and so on. On-market strategies. Potential development sites that are available on the market are all part of your on-market strategies when you're actually selecting a site. So if you're looking for sites that are already on the market, you've got 2 options, on market and off market, and these are potential development sites that are available on the market and are up for grabs publicly. The downside with this thing is that you will be competing with other people who also wish to become property developers and are looking for their first development. And the lower the entry point is going to be, the more competition you'll face. So you'll find more people who've got $1 million than there are people who've got $4 million, and then there are people who've got $10 million. And as you start going up, it starts to get less and less competitive. However, when you are starting out, you'll see that a lot of people are competing for the same kind of property, or they fall in the same kind of bracket where they've got the same amount of money as you do when you're starting out. The upside is, although the site is publicly listed on different websites that sell properties, or listing websites and with agents, there is a lot more information available for the property publicly. That means it's already out in the open, and you're bound to find a lot more information about the site. And you can approach buyer's agents or real estate agents and check out the property listing websites in your area for this. Step 9, if you could either go off-market sites. So you might just decide that I don't want to do on-market strategies. I'm just going to go after the off-market strategies. Off-market strategies that means you're trying to look for a site that's actually not listed on any property listing site. It's not available for sale, but you're trying to figure out if you can make a deal. Now, in order to do that, you can start contacting architects in your area. Very often they would know about a property that's going into that's already got a development approval or a town planning approval, and but they are not on the market as yet, and they might know somebody who might be interested. You could get in touch with people who are flippers. They're the people who acquire a site, add value, and simply flip them. So they don't go through all the way of getting a town planning permit or whatever. They would just get a permit and then put it back on the market to sell it. by word of mouth or by doing a letter drop in your area. So if you've done your research and you figured out this is the suburb I'm going to go after, you can also do a letter drop saying, hey, I'm interested in buying a property. Are you interested? You never know unless you actually start approaching people for it. The biggest upside to this strategy is that you have the time to negotiate the price and favorable terms. If you find a vendor who wants to sell their property, but they haven't actually gone ahead or were thinking of putting it on the market in the next couple of months or so, and you've been able to get to them, it'll save them the trouble to actually list it with an agent and pay the agent some commission and go through all this advertising. And you'll be able to negotiate price and favorable terms with them. Step number 10, which is the final step, and if you're serious, 100% serious, you found your first property and are now truly on the way to becoming a property developer. However, you now need to spend some time and invest in some sort of property development education. Property development is very similar to a business venture, only more lucrative. And we all know the success rate of most businesses. Since you are going to have a considerable amount of exposure in terms of money invested and the debt required to actually complete the development, which is your risk profile, I would highly recommend that you spend some time in learning everything there is about property development. Now you can go and do a degree course. It'll take you 2-3 years at uni, at a university, or wherever you think there's a course available, or you can do a course similar to something like what I offer, because I know for sure that my course has everything that you need to go from scratch, of having zero knowledge to go in all the way to developing 10, 15, 20, 50 apartments or townhouses or a building, because it has everything that you actually need. I went to a point where I was thinking of getting my course actually accredited with a government body, but then they had all these restrictions of the way I could sell the course or market the course, and it had I had to put together some exams and questions and all of that. And I figured that the people that I want to reach out and help are not necessarily the people who are looking for a degree or a diploma. They're people, they're mostly property investors who actually want to get into property development to actually boost their property portfolio. So if you're one of them, this property development course that I offer, which is the complete property development system, is actually for you.